I was excited about trying out new restaurants and meeting new people. I had never really dated much, but I thought it was time to break out of my shell. It was a few months ago. I still remember the thrill of swiping and matching. It was supposed to be fun, but I didn't expect to think about it so much. My first date was at a small bistro downtown. The place had low lighting, and the smell of pasta filled the air. I sat at a corner table, scanning the room. I was nervous. My date arrived, and she seemed more focused on the restaurant's decor than on me. She stared at the walls for what felt like minutes. I tried to make small talk. "Do you like it here?" I asked, hoping to steer the conversation away from the walls. "It's all in the details," she replied with a shaky voice. Something about her gaze made me uneasy. I let it go. Things went downhill from there. She kept glancing around, like she was taking notes. My heart raced. Maybe I was overthinking it. After awkward small talk, I made my excuses and left early. It was just weird that my next date was at a themed diner, bright and colorful. I felt hopeful again. But the woman was odd. She claimed she could feel emotions in food. I laughed, but she studied her meal with a serious look. When I asked what she meant, her expression dropped. "Sometimes, they tell me things." I felt a chill. I ignored it, convinced it was just a quirky personality. Each date afterward got stranger. One woman counted the ceiling tiles. Another kept escaping to the kitchen, and I had to pull her back. They all had unusual habits. I began to notice a pattern. Some of the restaurants had odd histories with strange Yelp reviews about paranormal experiences. This can't be happening. I didn't believe in ghosts, yet I felt paranoid. Were these women quirky, or was there something wrong with me? After each outing, I obsessed over the oddities, trying to piece together what I was missing. Then came the last date. She smiled, but it felt forced. "You like the atmosphere, don't you?" I nodded, unsure what to say. Her fingers traced the edges of the table like she was reading it. Suddenly, I heard something. A whisper. I turned instinctively to my side, but no one was there. A chill ran down my spine as her grin widened, her eyes darkening. "Why do you think they haunt these places?" She asked that I was terrified. I fumbled for words. My heart raced faster than ever as I glanced around. I thought I saw a shadow move behind me. "I think I need to go," I said, trying to sound brave, but she leaned in closer. "But we've only just begun." I stumbled back, feeling trapped. I had to leave. I'd never felt so scared. The weight of the night pressed down on me. I pushed through the door, gasping for air outside. As I walked away, the whispers followed me into the night. I didn't think I'd ever want to date again. The morning after the last date felt heavy. I barely slept, twisting and turning, haunted by the lingering whispers and unsettling conversations. My mind was a jumbled mess of fears and questions. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. That I decided to take a break from dating. I needed time to clear my head, to breathe without the pressure of meeting someone new. Instead, I focused on my routine work, walks in the park, and evenings curled up with a book. But peace was elusive. The strange behavior of those women consumed my thoughts. A few days later, I was walking past the bistro where my first date had been. I wasn't hungry, but something pulled me inside. I remembered the atmosphere, low lighting, the comforting scent of pasta. Maybe I needed to face my fears. As I entered, I noticed the little details, the artwork, the mismatched chairs. I sat in the same corner table, heart racing. It felt like coming back to the scene of a crime. I ordered a glass of water to calm my nerves. While waiting, I noticed an old newspaper clipping framed on the wall behind the bar. Curiosity got the better of me, and I stood to take a closer look. The article was about a string of strange occurrences in this very bistro: unexplained sounds, flickering lights, and ghost sightings. The article had been dated almost 10 years ago. A chill crept up my spine. Could this be what I had been experiencing on my dates? I focused on the text, my heart pounding. It mentioned a former owner who never really left the place. Interesting, isn't it? A voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to see an older man, perhaps in his 60s, leaning against the bar with a knowing smile. Yeah, I stammered, forcing a smile. I didn't realize this place had a history. He chuckled softly. You wouldn't believe how many people come here for the ambience, but stay for the stories. What kind of stories? I asked, intrigued despite my unease that he leaned closer. Mostly about the owner. They say he loved this place too much to ever leave it. Some say he still watches over it. The odd happenings. That's just him, reminding us he's still around. I didn't know whether to laugh or shiver. I had to remind myself that ghosts weren't real, right? Just then, I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket and pulled it out. A message popped up from an unknown number: you need to stop digging. It's not safe. My skin prickled. A wave of panic washed over me. Who was this? How did they know where I was? I dropped my phone back in my pocket, heart pounding. Are you alright? The man asked, concern etched on his face. Before I could answer, the lights flickered, and I felt an ominous draft. I glanced toward the door. It was just a regular lunch crowd, but the familiar whispers started to creep back into my mind. I think I need to go, I muttered, backing away. As I made my way to the exit, I glanced back at the man. He was watching me with an unsettling intensity. Then everything went a shade darker, and I realized I hadn't merely stepped into a restaurant, I had stepped into something far more strange. I pushed through the door, the crisp air hitting my face like a shock. My heart raced, but a new resolve began to settle in. I had to find out more. Those whispers weren't going to leave me alone. Was I brave enough to unravel this mystery, or was I getting in over my head? The next morning, I woke with a mixture of dread and determination. I couldn't just let that message slide. I had to figure out who sent it and what they wanted. Ignoring the creeping fear inside me, I grabbed my phone. It was time to dig deeper into the mysterious past of the bistro that I started with a search online, looking for anything about the former owner mentioned in the article. I found a name, Marco Rossi. A few clicks led me to an old blog that detailed his life. He was known for his passion for food and hospitality, a beloved figure in the neighborhood. Then the article veered into darker territory, whispers of his tragic death in a fire that had ravaged the bistro years ago. How sad, I muttered out loud, the weight of that knowledge settling heavily on me. The very clues I found exciting now felt like a burden. Next, I decided to investigate further. I recalled that the article mentioned a memorial at the bistro for Marco. Maybe the locals would have more to say about him. As I got ready to leave my apartment, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked tired, but there was an edge of resolve in my eyes that I hadn't noticed before that I stepped outside, the sun shining brightly, an unusually cheerful contrast to my mood. My feet carried me back to the bistro, and I told myself it was just curious interest that drove me, not fear. The bell above the door chimed as I entered, but this time, I wasn't so frazzled. The same older man was behind the bar, polishing glasses. He looked up and smiled when he saw me. Back for more stories, I see. Actually, I said, gathering my thoughts, I wanted to ask about Marco Rossi. Did he really die in a fire? His expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something I couldn't place. Ah, Marco. Yes, it was a terrible thing. The place burned down due to faulty wiring, they said. He never made it out. Did anyone ever see him? The question slipped out before I could rein it in. Some say they felt his presence. A few patrons reported strange happenings, flickering lights, or even a shadow moving across the room. But those are just stories. He shrugged like it was no big deal, but I felt more uneasy that I peered around the dimly lit room, scanning the interior for signs of anything unusual. "What do you think? Is he still here?" "People believe what they want to believe," he replied cryptically. Then he leaned closer and lowered his voice. "But there are things in this world, things we don't understand." The door opened, and a gust of wind swept through, making the lights flicker again. My heart dropped as I thought of the message on my phone. "You need to stop digging." Just then, the man's expression changed, his gaze drifting past me. I turned to see a figure entering the bistro. It was a woman, her face hidden beneath a hood. She moved with an unsettling slowness, as though every step was deliberate. The moment she stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew thick, and my breath quickened. The hairs on my arms stood on end. Then she stopped. When I saw it, her eyes were locked onto me, piercing and unnerving. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, as a sense of dread settled over me. I felt the weight of an invisible connection pulling me toward her. What did she want? How did she know? Suddenly, she turned on her heel and departed, leaving me drenched in uncertainty. I knew I had to follow her. The sensation that whatever was unfolding was far more complicated than I understood washed over me. But even more alarming was the idea that I might not be alone in this search for the truth. I bolted after her, pushing through the door of the bistro just in time to catch a glimpse of her disappearing into the alleyway. My heart raced as I hesitated, weighing my options. I couldn't turn back now. I had to know what her interest in me was about. The alley was dark and narrow, the walls lined with graffiti and remnants of crumbling brick. Shadows flickered under the faint light from the street. I took a cautious step forward, swallowed hard, and called out, "Hey! Wait!" Nothing. The alley seemed even quieter than before. I strained my ears for any sign of movement but only heard the distant hum of the city. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but the lure of the unknown kept me rooted. I moved deeper into the alley, suddenly feeling very small. Just then, I heard a rustle, followed by the sound of feet shuffling. "Hello?" I called again, my voice trembling slightly. A moment later, I caught sight of her silhouette leaning against the far wall. She didn't move or speak, her hood obscuring her features. I approached cautiously, the unease creeping back in. "Who are you? Do you know Marco Rossi?" At my question, she straightened, and in one swift motion pulled back her hood. Her face was pale, and her dark hair framed her sharp features. "You shouldn't be asking about him." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it carried a weight that made my heart pound harder. "Why not?" I pressed, instinctively taking a step closer. "What do you know?" She paused, her eyes darting to the back of the alley. "There are people who want to keep the past buried. You're putting yourself in danger." "Danger? What do you mean?" I was suddenly aware of how exposed I felt. Shadows seemed to close in, amplifying her words. Marco wasn't just a victim of his own tragedy. He got too close to something he shouldn't have. Her gaze locked onto mine, a look of urgency flashing across her face. "And now, you might be next. You need to stop." Panic surged within me. The message, the flickering lights, and that strange feeling in the bistro, it was all connected. "What do you know about the fire?" I asked, desperation creeping into my tone. As if something unseen shifted in the air, she hesitated. Just then, a deep echoing sound reverberated through the alley. I felt it in my bones, like a warning bell. I glanced back, half expecting the older barman to stroll in, but he didn't appear. "You have to choose, leave this alone or dig deeper and face the consequences," she said before finally retreating into the darkness. "Wait! Don't go!" I shouted, but she had already vanished, leaving me alone with the haunting echoes of her words. I turned back toward the street, my mind racing. Was I really ready to delve into this? I needed answers, but at what cost? As I stepped back out into the sunlight, my phone buzzed again, jolting me. With trembling hands, I looked down at the screen. The message was simple: "You're too close." I froze. Who was watching me? What had I gotten into? Suddenly, the search for the truth felt less like a curious endeavor and more like an ominous chase. I realized I had to find out who was behind both the message and the fire, before it was too late. I couldn't shake the girl's warning from my mind. I needed to find a way to gather information without drawing attention to myself. The last thing I wanted was to end up like Marco, whatever that meant. I decided to head home, hoping it would provide a chance to sort through my thoughts. Once inside, I locked the door behind me and leaned against it. I turned on the light. My small apartment felt suffocating and unwelcoming. I grabbed a cold bottle of water from the fridge, but my stomach churned as I remembered her pale face and unsettling words. As I sat at my cluttered table, scrolling through my phone, I considered my next move. I tried to gather my thoughts. What did I know about Marco? Not much, just what I had read in snippets of news articles. An accidental fire, a tragic loss. I needed to dig deeper, but I didn't know where to start. That's when I spotted a small, faded newspaper clipping stuck under a pile of old paperwork. I peered closer and saw a headline: "Local artist perishes in fire." My heart pounded. The name below it was familiar: Marco Rossi. I lifted the clipping, desperate for any clue it could provide. I quickly scanned the article. It detailed the fire and mentioned a gallery opening Marco had been involved with just days before the incident. My gut twisted further. He was part of the art scene. It felt like a step closer, yet heavy shadows lurked. I searched online for the gallery. It took a few tries, but I found a website that still featured a section dedicated to Marco's work. His art seemed vibrant, a stark contrast to his tragic end. A light flickered deep inside me. Maybe his artwork held something I needed to see. Suddenly, a sharp knock at my door startled me from my thoughts. I froze. My heart raced, thumping loudly in my ears. Who could it be? Was someone following me? I stepped carefully toward the door, peeking through the peephole. A figure stood outside, tall and cloaked in dark clothing. An uneasy feeling washed over me. Instinctively, I reached for my phone, ready to call for help if necessary. My mind raced. Maybe it was the girl from the alley, or someone else entirely. "Hey, I know you're in there," a deep voice called out, causing my heart to skip. "I'm looking for Marco Rossi. We need to talk." I stepped back, fear tightening its grip. What did this person know? What did they want with me? I thought about what the girl had said: people wanting to keep the past buried. I held my breath. Should I ignore them or open up? I needed answers, but I couldn't risk letting whoever that was inside go away. I yelled, trying to sound confident, but the knock came again, louder and more insistent. "You're the only one left who might help us. Please, let me explain." That struck a nerve. I remembered my uncertainty about digging deeper into Marco's past. And the girl's warning echoed in my mind. "You might be next." I glanced back at my phone. Should I call for help or risk opening that door? As I hesitated, the knocking became frantic. My instincts screamed at me, and just then, everything went dark. The power went out, plunging the apartment into shadows. The knocking stopped. Panic surged. Someone was in the hall. I flipped the switch on the wall, but nothing happened. My heart pounded in the silence. I squinted into the dark, hoping to see familiar shapes. The knocking had stopped, but what about the figure outside? My mind raced with scenarios. I backed away from the door, moving quietly. I needed to find a way out, to feel safe again. But escape routes were limited. My only option was through the small window in the kitchen. Could I really make it that far? Just as I debated my next move, I heard a soft rustle from the hall. My spine tingled. Someone was definitely there. I crouched lower, trying to catch any movement. The shadows seemed to shift. I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever was out there had heard me. Then, I saw it. A sliver of light creeping under my door. I froze, heart racing as footsteps echoed faintly. They were moving away. My chance. I narrowed my eyes, watching as the shadow retreated. This was my moment that I tiptoed to the kitchen, quiet as a breath. The window was still shut, but I could pry it open if I worked fast. I grasped the frame and began to push. The hinges creaked but gave way, tiny bits of dirt falling on the countertop. I winced but kept going. The light grew dimmer, and I sensed the footsteps returning that I managed to squeeze halfway through when I heard a voice sharp and cold. "I know you're in there. Don't think you can run." It was the same deep voice from before. Panic surged again, and I scrambled back into the kitchen just as the door creaked open. The figure stepped in, silhouetted against the dim hallway light. I could barely see their face, but I felt their gaze on me. I took a step back, adrenaline coursing through me. "Why are you looking for Marco?" I demanded, trying to sound steadier than I felt. My voice trembled in the stillness. "I'm here for answers," the figure replied, a hint of urgency creeping into their tone. "And maybe a little revenge." Revenge? What did that mean? My mind spiraled with confusion. My heart raced as I glanced around, desperate for a way out. "Just tell me what you know." They shouted, taking a step toward me that I backed away, bumping into the counter behind me. "I don't know anything." I stammered, my voice breaking. "Then you're wasting my time," they snapped, frustration etched deep into their posture. "Marco left clues. You just need to know where to look." Clues? My mind raced back to the article and the gallery. Could there be something in his art? "What do you mean?" I asked, grasping at hope amidst the fear. But I didn't have a chance to hear the answer. Before they could respond, there was a loud crash from another part of the apartment, a noise that reverberated through the walls like thunder. I turned just in time to see a shadow dart across the room. A flash of movement, and then everything went dark again. The power was out for good. Terror flared within me. I could barely breathe as the figure advanced, and the kitchen suddenly filled with chaos. I had to get out. Now. I stumbled backward, my heart racing as the dark enveloped me. I could hear the figure moving closer, their footsteps echoing in the silence. I crouched low, trying to hide my breath, searching for the slightest hint of light. Then, out of nowhere, I felt something brush against my leg. A metallic taste filled my mouth. It was just the kitchen table, but the fear made me flinch. I could still hear the figure's heavy breathing, punctuated by their slow, deliberate steps. "Where are you?" They hissed, a terrifying excitement in their voice. It felt like a game to them, and I was the prey. I couldn't just sit still, I had to act. I pushed myself away from the table, moving toward the back door. Just as I reached for the doorknob, the figure called out to me again. "You don't want to make this harder than it has to be. Tell me what you know, and maybe you'll get out of this." Get out of this? I whispered to myself, swallowing hard. I wasn't in control. I was terrified and in survival mode. Then I remembered the cell phone in my pocket. It was my only hope. I fished it out, pressing the power button as quietly as possible. The screen illuminated my face for a brief moment. The figure froze. I dashed toward the door, but it wouldn't budge. I cursed under my breath, pulling and pushing, growing frantic. Suddenly, the figure lunged at me. I barely sidestepped them, shoving the phone back in my pocket and darting past. I sprinted toward the living room, trying to remember the layout in the dark. My feet pounded against the hardwood floor, adrenaline pushing me forward. I could hear them right behind me, breathing heavily, piercing the silence with their presence. That I reached the end of the hall and felt my way toward the front door. It was locked. I fumbled with the keys on the hook beside it, trying to jam them into the keyhole. Time felt warped, each second extending into an eternity. I heard them laugh softly, the sound sending chills up my spine. They relished the chase. But then, a shadow moved near the corner of my eye. I turned as a different figure emerged from the dark, this one smaller and familiar. Lily. I gasped, recognizing my little sister. What was she doing here? What is going on? She asked, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. Before I could respond, the first figure yelled, "Get away from her." The urgency in their voice sliced through the tension. I didn't have a plan now, but there was no time to think. Lily, we have to get out. Right now. I shouted, grasping her arm. Just as we turned to flee, the figure lunged forward with a speed that shook me. In that moment, I realized I didn't know who was really in danger. That's when I saw it. A glimmer of something shiny on the floor beneath the kitchen counter. But I didn't have time to make sense of it. I yanked Lily away, pulling her along as we raced toward the back door again. But it wouldn't be easy. I could still hear my pursuer's relentless footsteps closing in. I had to find another way. Uncertainty wrapped around me like a fog. What would I uncover next? I pulled Lily close, my heart pounding against my ribcage. We had to find a way out, and fast. The threat still loomed just behind us, a shadow that refused to relent. We darted through the living room, and I scanned wildly for an escape route. My mind raced. The window. I pushed Lily ahead of me and veered towards it, ripping open the curtain and feeling the cool night air brush against my face. But it was locked tight. No, no, no. I whispered, panic clawing at my throat as I hammered my fists against the glass. It felt useless, I needed a plan. Is there another way? Lily whispered, her voice shaking. Shoo, I hushed her, my eyes darting to the hallway. The figure's footsteps grew louder, closer. I couldn't let them find us. In a desperate search for options, I remembered the small half-bath nearby. I pulled Lily with me, pushing the door open and dragging her inside. It was cramped and dark. Stay silent, I instructed, though I could barely manage a whisper. We huddled in the closet-sized space, trying to melt into the shadows. I could barely breathe, the air thick with fear. The footsteps stopped, and for a moment, I thought they might have lost us, then came a knock. A sharp, impatient rap on the bathroom door. I know you're in there. The figure called out, voice low and mocking. You can't hide forever. My heart raced as every instinct in me screamed to run. But I needed to wait. To think. I turned to Lily, her face pale, eyes wide with terror. I reached out and squeezed her hand. No matter what happens, I will protect you, I said, trying to sound brave but knowing the truth. I was scared too. There was a pause, then the figure scoffed. What is it, little girl? Want to play a game? Their tone twisted, like they were savoring the chase. How about this, if you come out now, I won't hurt her. Don't listen. I urged, squeezing her hand tighter. But the uncertainty hung between us like a thick fog, clouding my thoughts. What was happening? Suddenly, I heard a loud crash from somewhere outside. It rattled the windows and made the walls tremble. The figure outside turned quickly, whispering a curse, then receding slightly. Lily, we have to go now. I said, quickly leading her back toward the door. I didn't know what that noise meant, but it was our best chance. I carefully cracked open the door, peering out. The hallway was empty. I stepped out cautiously, pulling Lily along. Just as we made it a few steps, I felt something hard under my foot. I bent down to see a small metal object gleamed in the dim light. It was a key. But a key to what? Before I could think, the silence shattered. The figure burst back into view, anger twisting their face. I told you not to come out. Lily screamed, and I grabbed her hand, knowing we had only moments before we had to bolt. We raced down the hall, the figure screaming after us. My mind spun, filled with chaos and fear. But then, as we reached the front door, I saw the key in my hand. Maybe it could unlock something more than just a door. Would it be our salvation? Or another trap? There was no time to think. I shoved the key into the lock. Would it be enough? The key clicked into place. My heart thundered in my ears as I turned it. Was this the right choice? I pushed the door, my heart racing with hope and fear. The door flew open, and I was met with a chilling sight. The night outside was darker than I expected, shadows clawing at the edges of my vision. But I couldn't hesitate. I pulled Lily through the door and out into the cool evening air that we dashed down the porch steps, the ground crunching beneath our feet. This way, I whispered, guiding her toward the side of the house. The figure's shouts echoed behind us, reckless and furious. Don't let them catch us, don't let them catch us, I repeated under my breath, trying to keep panic from spilling over. Each step echoed in my mind, urging me to go faster, to find safety. As we rounded the corner of the house, I saw it up ahead, a thick grove of trees. It was our only option. We sprinted toward them, limbs pushing through the growing darkness. I didn't stop to analyze, just ran. The trees loomed closer, their trunks like sentinels lurking in the shadows. Just as we reached the edge of the grove, I stumbled. My foot caught a root, sending me crashing to the ground. I cursed under my breath, heavy branches scratching at my arms. Are you okay? Lily whispered, looking down at me, fear etched on her face. Yeah, just go. I said, wincing, struggling to get back on my feet. I could hear the figure's footsteps crashing behind us. They wouldn't take long to catch up. I finally regained my balance and we dove into the protective shadows of the trees. I pulled Lily behind a thick trunk, panting. We listened as the footsteps grew louder, then stopped. I held my breath, heart racing. How could we escape if we couldn't even see where they were? What now? Lily asked, her voice shaking. A moment later, I caught a glint of something in the moonlight. My eyes widened as I realized it was a small shed partially hidden behind the trees. There. I whispered, hoping it might provide some shelter. We scurried to the shed, ducking through the door, which creaked ominously on its hinges. The inside was dark and filled with the smell of damp wood and rusted metal. I pulled Lily in after me, closing the door behind us. Just as the door latched, I heard the footsteps again. They were close. I peeked through a crack in the shed. The figure was shining a flashlight, sweeping across the yard, searching. They're looking for us, I said, panic resurfacing. We have to stay quiet. That's when I saw a window at the back of the shed. It was small, barely big enough for us to fit through, but it was our only way out. Lily, we need to make a plan. Can you help me push this? As we inched toward the window, I could feel the heartbeat of fear pulsing in the back of my mind. Would this lead to safety, or would we only find ourselves trapped? The figure's voice rang out again, demanding to know where we were. Are we going to make it? Lily asked, her voice trembling. I had to believe we would. But as we slid toward the window, doubt crept in. Would this be an escape, or worse, another dead end? I pushed the window open with all my might, adrenaline rushing through my veins. The cool night air slipped inside, mingled with a mix of fear and hope. You first, I whispered to Lily, my heart racing. She hesitated, glancing back at the shed's dark interior, where shadows seemed to dance with every flicker of the flashlight outside. I can't, she whimpered, her eyes wide and terrified. I felt a tightening in my chest. Panic swirled as the footsteps approached, thumping and echoing louder, faster. Trust me, I urged, pulling her closer. Just get in, and then I'll follow. With determination, she nodded and climbed onto the old wooden bench beneath the window. I released the latch, and the window creaked open wider. Now, Lily. I urged, my voice edged with urgency. She scrambled through, her small frame squeezing into the narrow opening. I couldn't waste another second. As I prepared to follow, I heard the figure's voice again, now clearer, the anger palpable. You can't hide forever. They shouted. Their footsteps were closer, the light from their flashlight illuminating the front of the shed, cutting through the darkness like a knife. No. I cried, my breath coming in short gasps. I'm coming. I clambered onto the bench, throwing my body through the window just as the door banged open. I wedged myself through, the wood snagging against my clothes as I tumbled out into the grass. The moon was my only light, but it guided me as I crawled out, landing in an awkward heap beside Lily. I glanced back at the shed, panic flooding my thoughts. There was no time to lose. This way. I whispered, grabbing her hand, and we darted into the thick trees ahead. That we moved swiftly, weaving through the trunks and avoiding the faint beams of light trailing behind us. I could hear the figure's frantic footsteps chasing after. Stop! They yelled. You can't run from the past. As we sprinted, my thoughts churned with confusion. Who were they? What did they want? I pushed the questions aside. Survival was all that mattered now. I led Lily deeper into the trees, hoping to lose our pursuer. After running for what felt like ages, we stumbled onto a small path, overgrown and forgotten. The underbrush crunched beneath our feet, and I strained to listen, weighing the sounds of the forest against the ominous echoes of pursuit. I wanted to let out a sob of relief, but I couldn't. Not yet. Where are we going? Lily asked, breathless beside me. To find help, I said, though my heart was full of uncertainty. I didn't even know if anyone was still out here to help us. The night wrapped around us like a cocoon, every rustle and shadow a reminder that danger lurked nearby. Suddenly, a figure loomed at the edge of the path. I skidded to a stop, pulling Lily close. It was the woman from the alley, the one who had warned me. What was she doing here? The flashlight beam swung towards us, and I felt my heart drop into my stomach. Is it safe? I managed to ask, fear creeping back in like a vine entangling my thoughts. She nodded, urgency etched across her face. Follow me. There's no time. Before I could question her, she turned and dashed down the path, blending into the shadows as she moved. I looked at Lily, who was trembling beside me, and gripped her hand tightly. Trust her, I said, though my uncertainty lingered. We began to move again, following the woman as she pushed through the trees. The path opened into a small clearing, and as we emerged, I gasped. A run-down cabin stood before us, nestled among the trees and cloaked in shadows. In here. The woman called again, urgency hardening her tone. She disappeared inside, and I hesitated only a moment before pulling Lily along. We rushed into the dark interior, the door slamming shut behind us. The inside was dimly lit, filled with the musty scent of wood and something earthy, but I could barely take it in before the woman was speaking again. We need to hide. She moved quickly, her eyes darting towards the windows. They won't stop until they find you. What is happening? I asked, my heartbeat roaring in my ears. What do they want? Marco Rossi, she replied, her voice low and urgent. The truth about him. It's entangled with your life now. You have to stay away. They're desperate, and they'll do anything to keep it buried. Just as she finished speaking, a loud crash echoed from outside, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching. An eerie chill filled the air. My heart pounded in my chest. Would we be safe here? The woman's gaze met mine, her expression fierce yet grave. You have to be ready for anything, she said, as something shifted outside. What you seek has deeper roots than you understand. But I can't tell you everything, it's too dangerous. The door rattled, and my stomach dropped. She glanced toward the window, a shadow crossing her face. Prepare yourselves. I felt a rush of adrenaline igniting in my veins. The danger that had been stalking us was crashing through the door, and no matter how twisted the truth was, we were all caught in this web now. How would this end? Would we uncover the secrets, or would we go down fighting against ghosts of the past? I gripped Lily's hand tighter, knowing that whatever came next, we would face it together. But the questions hung heavily in the air, like a shroud obscuring the truth I desperately sought. What was real? What would I finally uncover? As the door broke open and shadows flooded in, I steeled myself for the next chapter of this dangerous descent into the unknown.